Hey everyone, thank you so much for attending our second episode of Omnichannel Unpacked, where we'll be covering Omnichannel and B2B at ShipBob. For those of you that have never met me or seen me before, my name is Allie Adrian. I am the Senior Product Marketing Manager at ShipBob, supporting the B2B team. And I will turn it over to Wes Duquette, who can introduce himself shortly.
Thanks, Allie. I'm Wes Duquette. I am our Vice President and General Manager of our B2B function, which includes all B2B retail technologies. I'll turn over to Shai for an introduction.
Hi, everybody. My name is Shai, and I've been with ShipBob for 6 years. Originally, I focused on building out the WMS product, and in the last year or so, I've been working with Wes and Allie on building our B2B business line. So on the side, I also run a small e-commerce business that I do FBA and FBM fulfillment. So I sort of know this firsthand, and I'm happy to share and excited to share about my experiences.
Awesome. Thank you, gentlemen. All right, so we'll start off this episode by asking ourselves, why omnichannel and why B2B? The answer is actually quite simple. Consumers now have more options than ever before. They can buy in store, they can buy online, and they can even buy online and pick up in store or curbside. The options are endless, essentially. So in order for businesses to succeed and gain a larger market share in today's environment, they really do need to have multiple commerce channels. So outside of your own e-commerce website, these channels can include online marketplaces. I'm sure you've all heard of Walmart Marketplace. There's also Amazon. There's also retailer dropshipping programs and selling in the physical stores of retailers. So with our 2023 State of E-commerce Fulfillment Report, we did learn that 75% of brands will sell on 2 or more commerce channels, and that 63% of brands will add new channels in 2023. And at ShipBob, we do want our merchants to feel confident knowing that no matter what size company they are, ShipBob can be their partner in retail growth. Since launching our B2B solution, ShipBob has had several merchants pose the question of, how do I get into these big box retailers? Where do I start? Who do I connect with? We're actually extremely happy to announce that we now have a team focused on developing relationships with retail strategy and broker partners like Miracle and RangeMe, which helps you expand into the world's largest retailers like Walmart and Target. And also, no matter what size, ShipBob can also be your partner in retail growth. If you've already established retailer relationships and are looking to find the right EDI partner and you have no clue what EDI is and no idea how to start it and what to look for, please know that our team can also assist with that, as we have relationships with trusted EDI partners that we can refer you to. The retailer, partner, and EDI program is managed by Meg Glavey, who is our Senior Partner Manager of Platforms at ShipBob. If you are interested in learning more about our retail and EDI partners, please contact Meg. I'll drop her email in the chat shortly. So I'm sure you guys are wondering, what retailers do we support? There's a large list, but I'm gonna hand it over to Wes to really continue this conversation.
Thanks, Allie. Great background. Before we get into kind of the details of, some specifics around retail distribution, specifics on retail dropship and the space that ShipBob plays within that world, I wanted to just kind of take a very big step back and talk a little bit about the industry in total. And I think many of you or all of you have probably heard of the concept of EDI, but I often find getting into conversations with merchants who have either looking to get into retail in the future or been in retail for a bit that don't fully understand EDI in a sense. But just to give a good background, EDI, which is known as electronic data interchange, it's a technology that's been around for 60 or more years. In the 1960s, it was developed, but it has become really the standard communication for many different retailers and suppliers. And so EDI transmissions, they hold everything from purchase order information, shipping and receiving information. It can be as, continuation of back and forth around invoicing and payments and things of that nature. So EDI is really that backbone communication between a retailer and a supplier. And the interesting thing to me, and this will get a little bit more into ShipBob's approach, has been that our ability to evolve around EDI is not the technology of EDI itself, but all of the different pieces that, as a fulfillment partner, we can wrap around EDI. All the different visibilities and transparencies we're able to give. So we'll talk a little bit more about retail distribution and dropship next. All right, let's talk a bit about those. So there's two common types of retail fulfillment you'll hear when you think of large retail chains. You'll hear retail distribution and you'll hear retail dropship. And to differentiate the two, the first is retail distribution you can think of as large quantities of units going from a fulfillment center to a either distribution center or retailer or direct to store to then be sold to consumers. Those orders are originally, originate from a retailer. Typically you'll go through some type of EDI brokerage or another systematic type place, arrive at your 3PL or fulfillment partner as an order. Those will be picked, packed, and shipped, often palletized and sent off to distribution center or store. And that is one of the that's the most common type of kind of high volume retail relationships you'll see. Another piece that you see commonly out there that's a different volume or a different construct, but still a retail relationship is retail drop shipping. And that's done a little bit differently in the sense that all orders are placed by consumers on typically a retailer website. So think of Target.com, Walmart.com. Those orders then flow in from a data standpoint to a fulfillment center you can see. And then it's similar to an e-commerce type distribution and fulfillment process that sends single packages or single parcels to a house. Now, ShipBob plays within many of these, and we'll talk to that a little bit. But often as merchants are looking to grow their retailer relationships, these are kind of the two common areas and desires to get into. We'll talk a little bit more, but often retail drop shipping is a really good first step into a retailer relationship. And from there, once you've proven your product's attractiveness, desirability to consumers, from there, a really good opportunity to be full retail distribution with a retailer. All right, let me talk a bit about how ShipBob looks at B2B fulfillment. We'll talk a bit about a number of our solutions that we host. So we talked a bit about EDI and retail distribution and drop shipping, but there's many more different flavors and functions within this world of B2B and wholesale that different merchants have a desire to continue to grow their brand. So some of the other areas that we've invested in from both a technology and operations standpoint over the last number of years has not only been that EDI driven retail distribution and dropship, but a lot of pieces around Amazon FBA and FBA prep. We're seeing that be a very big growth engine for many brands, especially those aspiring to be within a retail sector. It's a really good also training ground to start to get your brand from a supply chain standpoint, manufacturing standpoint, ready to do a much higher volume of supply chain activity. We're also seeing some other big emergence of Shopify B2B. Shopify has put a very big emphasis on growing this part of their technology for Shopify Plus subscribers. This piece has been a really great way for going to commercial locations that aren't necessarily large retail chains, but will be a place that across the country you can start to ship bulk orders, you can start to do wholesale type pieces, and another really good training ground to build your business as you start to think of that foray into retail. ShipBob also focuses on a number of different kind of custom integrations, APIs, and ERPs. We'll talk a little bit about the way we focus on our integrations, but this is one of the really big developments we've had in the last number of years is being able to integrate with multiple systems and ERPs to allow merchants to bring orders from whatever origination point they have into their ShipBob system and dashboard. And then the final piece around manual B2B order creation. This is a really important component when you start to get a myriad of different buyers out there. So the traditional buyers from a large retail chain will, submit orders in EDI fashion. You may have a host of different other ways that you'll get wholesale orders: on phone, in email, potentially through a different online system outside of Shopify B2B. All of those can now be ingested into ShipBob in a what we call much more visible and transparent fashion. We'll talk to that a little bit in a moment. But one of the big things that ShipBob has been able to do over the last number of years is meet your shoppers where they are. So, we've always traditionally been a best-in-class D2C fulfillment house, and our investment over the last number of years has allowed us to become now a best-in-class B2B fulfillment house as well. All right, let's talk a little bit about some of our approaches to EDI and generically how we think about getting data of orders into ShipBob's system. Traditionally, and many of you may have heard of the different types of EDI brokers, SPS, logic broker, those types are kind of that traditional next point where a retailer will send any purchase order. That piece right now today has been a commonplace where ShipBob now integrates to a host of different EDI brokerage houses. We think of it as EDI broker agnostic. So any broker you may be using, we've had the ability to integrate with. That goes even further when you start to look at any ERPs you may use. As your business grows, you may get to a place where you want to have a source of truth that is your ERP, be it NetSuite, an SAP, those types of things. We also have moved to have integrations with all of those major players as well. And so one of the great things as you continue to innovate is the ability to integrate with multiple systems. All right, let's talk a little bit about when you think about resourcing your business. When you start to think about what it takes to put resources around taking that next step in different types of fulfillment. I think many businesses have been in the place where they typically have just resourced to an online fulfillment practice. And as they start to get into retail or think about how they grow their retail section, there's a really big component to start to put how they resource this from an internal perspective. And so one of the angles that ShipBob tries to always impress upon current merchants and future merchants is you're able to grow and scale your business both in online from a D2C perspective and from a B2B perspective without needing to build a large supply chain team. And so I've actually got a video here that I want to share a short clip of. This is here from our Fulfilled conference we had in June in Southern California. I'll set the stage a little bit because this is the CEO of one of our merchants that you can see a great case study online at shipbob.com. But Pet Labs has been a company that's been with us for 2.5 years. Brought on both initially their direct consumer business and then their B2B retail fulfillment that they do through a number of different distributors of Chewy, Petco, those types of big box retailers for pet. What the question that was asked by our CMO who's on stage with Stephanie was, what does it take to resource your supply chain team now that you've grown your business? Their business has basically 3x'd in the last 3 years to over $100 million in revenue. And our curiosity is, how do you support that kind of growth? And so Stephanie gives us a little bit of insight to how they have resourced the team and what they've done. Allie, do you want to go ahead and show Stephanie?
We have a 6-person ops team, maybe 2.5 focus on fulfillment. It's a 9-figure business. We just couldn't do that without a great partner.
Great. And this is one of the things that we continually hear as our merchants grow. As they continue to grow their business, scale their business, it does not require them to scale their operations and their supply chain at the same clip. And a lot of that is around the way we are able to use technology and the services offered around retail. So, all right, I want to talk a little bit into how ShipBob looks at retail distribution. So I'm going to take a short deep dive into ShipBob's approach at retail distribution. Now, I mentioned that EDI is a somewhat legacy technology, and there hasn't been a lot of innovation over the last 60 years, if you will. But the really great thing is what we can do as a technology fulfillment company to wrap around EDI to give our merchants ultimate visibility and potentially ultimate control. And I say potentially because the intention of our offering is that a merchant can reduce their heavy lifting, if you will, reduce the resources they need to hire, and still have really great visibility and control as to how their retail fulfillment goes. So a couple things we look at, of course, the most important when you're in the retail world is thinking about retail requirements and compliance. Chargebacks are a very real thing. Chargebacks are a profit center for retailers. So one of the really great things that we're able to do is not only get a chance to give visibility into where orders are, but making sure that all of the OTIF, on time, in full, all of those types of things are visible across our entire network of facilities as well as to our merchants. And that's kind of where end-to-end visibility comes in. The ability to see when your order is being processed, when your order is being picked, packed, and then timestamps for when it leaves the facility. Additionally, we have added, and a lot of what we add is, first driven by retailer need, and then second by merchant desire. Merchants have wanted to see what it looks like when a pallet goes out the door. How did that parcel look when it left? There's oftentimes where there's disagreements between suppliers and retailers as to what condition it arrives in, well, you have ultimate proof and visibility when your pallet or your shipment is leaving the warehouse as to what it looks like. And so we have a lot of our merchants that will utilize these photos to say, here it left in great condition, it was on a Target truck, and from there something bad had happened. And they have a really good chance to go back and fight chargebacks and things like that. A couple of other things that we've been able to do from a technology perspective is often onboarding new retailers can take weeks and sometimes months. With some of the integrations we've been able to do and the repetitiveness with we come back to retailers and have a repeatability, we can do retailer light ups and launches within a matter of days. And all of this leads to this ability to replace a lot of manual operations that brands will start to get into when they launch into retail with automated processes and services that take ShipBob and put you at the center of control. Finally, last piece is, there are this widespread retailer kind of technologies that you may get into. Like I said, EDI is the most common language. But even if you get into a place where you have, retailers submitting what we think of as manual orders, email, phone orders, those are still places that you can tap into all this technology when using the ShipBob platform. Okay, so that's a bit about retail background. I want to shift gears a little bit and start to talk about Amazon fulfillment. And I'm going to bring in our Senior Director of Product, Shai, to talk to us a bit more about Amazon fulfillment.
Thank you, Wes. So Amazon, they actually offer multiple ways to sell on their platform, right? The two widespread and most famous programs are probably Fulfilled by Merchant, which is commonly known as FBM, and Fulfilled by Amazon, commonly known as FBA. So the great news with working with ShipBob, we actually support both programs, and they are very easy to work with ShipBob with. These programs are great for merchants. They have minimal barriers of entry, and they're great for e-commerce brands to get on Amazon quickly, and it could be a really good first step into the world of retail, as Wes discussed, setting up your supply chain, compliance, and so forth. In a nutshell, FBM is where you list your products on Amazon.com, and the sales will happen on Amazon, but you own the fulfillment, meaning when an order is placed, you need to pick, pack, and ship the order. FBA is a program where you are listing your products the same way as FBM, but those orders are getting fulfilled by Amazon through their fulfillment network. So both programs have pros and cons. I'll kind of walk you through those pretty quickly. But if you think about FBM, it's great for folks that want to test the water a little bit and see other products sell on Amazon without commitment of shipping a lot of inventory to their fulfillment centers. Obviously, the fees are reduced because you aren't paying for the fulfillment, and you need to distribute less inventory, which usually means less overhead and management of inventory across multiple locations if it's in your own fulfillment center, ShipBob fulfillment center, and an FBA fulfillment center. The cons are no SEO perks on Amazon and no Prime badge. So I know usually when you buy on Amazon, you look for that Prime badge, and the placement is actually, they place the search higher if you use FBA. So if you do FBM, you do not get any of those perks. And another con is you, as the merchant, need to handle the customer service and return. So any questions, where's my order, and so forth, you need to handle. On the FBA side, the pros are, the obvious pro is that you get your Prime badge that everybody wants and really can increase your sales. You get to focus on the selling and not on fulfilling. You get the SEO perks, and Amazon really covers all the customer service and return processing. So if something goes wrong with an order, where is it? It's there. It's an Amazon issue. It's not a merchant issue. The cons is you really lose control a lot of inventory. You have to place it in multiple places, and there's even to send inventory to these locations, there's strict packaging and labeling requirements. So the good news is ShipBob offers support for both. For FBM, just in a nutshell, we support this. It's very common for brands to do this. It's a one-click integration into this, and we will start selling an order. These are essentially direct-to-consumer, very similar to our direct-to-consumer orders. Ship out, pick, pack, ship, very straightforward. All right, and then the FBA side, Allie, can we go to the next slide, please? Yep, the FBA side is actually a lot more complicated for the merchant. The setup, though, with ShipBob is extremely, extremely easy. We have invested heavily in our new FBA prep flow. So FBA prep is essentially the flow where we get the inventory ready for you to send to Amazon in compliant manner. So imagine you need to send 1,000 units of product X. We do all that for you. We actually invested heavily in this, and we've built an automated flow where all you have to do is tell us what you want to send. And as you can see in these screenshots that are playing, is we automatically connect to your Amazon Seller Central and submit that information to them. We have built a direct integration to Amazon, and we essentially tell us what you want to send, and we handle the rest for you, right? So all the compliance is taken care of. We built in validations to our system to make sure that we are within the box size requirements, box weight requirements, box quantity requirements, all these things that you won't have to learn about, because we will take care of that for you, and you are offloading this information and this expertise to us. All this is built into our system. If a packing associate, for example, wants to pack over a requirement, over a compliance guideline, we will not even let them proceed. We will automatically generate all the FBA labels for you, so you do not need to download anything from Seller Central. You don't really even need to log into Seller Central for the shipment and look at the shipments, because we will automatically download those and apply them to the packages. We will provide you tracking updates as things ship out. And all this really happens with you clicking about 3 buttons and just get submitted to Seller Central. And Wes is joining in a second.
Great, thanks, Shai. So we'll move now into our Q&A portion. But before we did, I wanted to just talk a bit about, we mentioned, you can see here in the middle, which is our company Pet Labs that I mentioned there's a case study, but there's a number of other case studies on our website that I think are great to get a sense of, you know, how merchants have from different stages been able to grow their business in retail and B2B with ShipBob. And there is a couple different flavors, if you will, of merchants that we've worked with. Some are very new into retail. Some, this is their first retail distribution relationship. And we're able to kind of start from that 0 to 1. Others, like Pet Labs, have had long-term existing retail relationships that they want to continue to grow. And so depending on where you're at in that journey, it's a really great opportunity to have, you know, that next level of advisory and continue to phase out and evolve your brand and evolve your retail relationships from a fulfillment standpoint. Okay, great. We're going to now move into our Q&A portion, and I'll hand it over to Allie to begin that.
Yes, we do have a question from Bria. In what ways, if any, do various ESG regulations, whether it be domestic or internationally, have an impact on your role as a resource in the retail space?
Thanks, Bria. Yeah, I can take that. So it's interesting from an environmental standpoint, you know, the baseline for all retail, when you think about large retail chains, is very compliance driven, meaning that there are already many regulations, in a sense, put around. And so the first step from a retail standpoint is to make sure you're following those compliant driven pieces that have some level of environmental, and in some cases there's governance in there. And a lot of that is typically domestic. One of the other things that ShipBob has, our approach is very sustainable. For example, we do not use bubble wrap within the facilities. We find other ways from a dunnage and a protection standpoint that are more environmentally sustainable. So there's a number of things that we've done in there. Now, I know there's a lot of other things internationally that have gone on. You know, ShipBob does a amount of cross-border today, but not a lot of the ESG stuff has yet come in there. But much of this we found is first retailer driven, and then secondarily, there's a really good opportunity to have an environmental impact with how you basically stock your inventory, with how you stock your supplies and things of that nature, which we've done in our facilities.
Awesome. All right, so when is the right time to get into B2B? And is there a milestone in a brand's life cycle that marks when it makes sense to get started?
Yeah, I can take that as well. I think it depends. There's a number of different, I think, industry factors, the industry you're in, that should also be considered. So, you know, for a number of our merchant examples that we've seen launch into retail, and I think, you know, I know the Pet Labs story very, very well. their launch into retail actually came later than many other brands would from a revenue perspective. And the reason for that was they wanted to make sure that all of their kind of supply chain pieces, all of their barcoding, manufacturing, all of that supply chain was ready to go into retail outside of just the fulfillment aspect itself. And so depending on what type of industry you're in, there may be a different size you want to grow to. Then I have other merchants that, as within a year and a half of launching their online business, they had an opportunity to go through with Target and went full force into it. So a little bit of this really depends on the structure that you've built within your kind of manufacturing process within a number of different pieces. But again, the great thing when you partner with a technology fulfillment partner like a ShipBob is you don't need to worry about having hired up a large supply chain team, a large operations team in order to orchestrate that big move into retail.
Awesome, thank you.
Can I add, Allie?
Yeah.
Just on the FBA and Amazon side, I'd say you don't need to wait too long to get that started. It's usually in the phase one, you're setting up your D2C site. You can go start exploring in Amazon and the different program types that they have. And if you scale up, then you can find the partner to help scale. And we have the tools, but I would not wait with Amazon. Amazon's a great way to learn retail. It's very, very low barrier for entry. All you have to do is fill out a form or two, get validated on their end, and you can start selling. And if you already have inventory at ShipBob, you can literally in a click of a button get those orders out the door. So I wouldn't wait. And getting into the big retailers, it's a process. So be ready to start forming those relationships, talking to Meg, if based on what Allie said, and get those conversations going before you are actually ready, maybe to take the step. You want to start learning because you want to talk to the buyers and so forth.
Awesome. So getting into retail, sometimes you only have one chance to get it right. How do you make sure you don't mess it up? And what is the biggest mistake you see brands make?
Yeah, I can lend a story or at least a piece of guidance we've seen. Yeah, there is a sense of, once you get that retail relationship initially built, you want to make the most of it. We have a number of brands that have had an opportunity to get into big box retailers. So recently we took a beauty brand into Walmart, and the way they actually got into Walmart initially was through Dropship. But they had an opportunity to do somewhere between 200 and 300 stores, but they were put on a trial period. And this trial period had a couple different pieces. One of the major pieces was an OTIF score, so on time in full percentage that they needed to meet. And so that OTIF score is very much on their fulfillment partner, which in this case is ShipBob. So one of the really important pieces is make sure you're partnering in the right place. But another really important component is making sure that your product is shelf ready, depending on what you're looking to do. So we mentioned a bit about getting into Dropship and that being a kind of first foray in. Many of our merchants start in Dropship because their product hasn't quite been shelf ready. They may have something that that is ship ready. It's ready to go into a box, but it's not ready to be on a shelf at Walmart yet. So that's one of the pieces that you want to start to think about with your business is, what do I want to have on the shelf? Is it what I currently have manufacturing? Is that ready to be on the shelf at Walmart? Or do I need to start that process now? And then from there, it is making sure you have the right partnerships to take you to the next level. Because the example I mentioned with our beauty brand, they went from 300 to over 1,000 doors in Walmart within the first 6 months. And so the great thing was we were able to, go and scale with them across, multiple facilities across different regions and meet that demand that Walmart had put. But when you think about getting into that next stage of your growth, having a partner that can grow with you rapidly is very important.
All right. So what is a healthy distribution between my D2C and B2B lines of business?
Yeah, I think this is a good question, and it's not a one size fits all. I think it really depends on the type of product, your target market. We see some brands that are almost completely B2B. We see some brands that are almost completely D2C, and they have really no interest in going into the retail world for multiple reasons. Maybe they don't have the customers they're after aren't. There's no specific store that they could meet them at in best manner. Maybe they don't want to take on the operation complexity. So I think it's really something you need Each brand needs to think about themselves and think about, what their strategy is long term. I think, though, having the option to be in both when you're choosing your fulfillment partners in technology and ERPs and all those things that you're sort of scaling up and wherever you start, you don't want to lock yourself out of the future opportunities that might come.
Awesome. I think another thing to add is that people do need to be extremely mindful of the control that you want over your brand as you go into retailers, especially if you're going into the physical stores. You lose a lot of the control over your brand and the service being provided. So if another brand has your stuff in their store or they're shipping it personally, you lose control over that portion of your brand and that customer experience.
Yeah. To give a specific example, Allie, I think even the best example is Amazon. In the end, when you get an Amazon order, it's in an Amazon box. You get the buyer, the shopper will see Amazon recommendations. It's not the same as having direct to consumer, but for many, many, many brands, that disadvantage is not it. The advantage of having more sales and exposure on Amazon.com, one of the largest retailers in the world, outweighs the loss of that brand identity. But it's not the same for every single brand.
Awesome. So we do have this question. Any pro tips for brands getting into B2B? What about for brands that have already gotten started? Shai, I kind of want to put a twist on this and ask specifically any pro tips for brands getting into Amazon, and then we can answer the more open question of B2B right after that.
Yeah, I just think that Amazon's so easy to get started. The pro tip is just be there if it's right for your brand and see where it takes you. Personally, on my e-commerce journey, I started on Amazon. I didn't know, this is prior to my experience at ShipBob. I didn't know much about it, sort of exploring as, an entrepreneur, and was able to figure it all out by myself. It's so easy, you can get going. My pro tip is if it's right for your brand, be there, get signed up, play around with it, get content on there, and just start getting going. Because it's going to teach you a lot about your next stages and journey on both the D2C and B2B world. So that would be my pro tip.
Good. I'll add two that are more specific to retail. There are two, and I'll talk to each of them. The first is do the boring stuff, and the second would be utilize ShipBob partnerships. But I'll talk about doing the boring stuff first. In order to be in a great place to go into retail, when you do get that opportunity, when you build that relationship, you have to have things set. You need to have barcodes, UPCs, those types of stuff. So we have partnerships with a number of different kind of accelerators, but we also have partnerships with these very kind of upfront preparatory type pieces. So GS1, which is basically a regulation and governing body of labels and UPCs, is a partner of ours. And one of the things that GS1 wants to do with our merchants is have a very early conversation before retail is even in the thoughts to make sure that they're getting their product, their manufacturing, basically retail ready. So kind of one of the pro tips early on, before even getting that B2B call, if you will, or retailer call, is make sure you've done some of that upfront stuff. It's not always what doesn't feel like growing your business in the same way, but the reality is, for most merchants, they won't get this great viral moment that has Target coming knocking on your door. Now, I hope you do, but for your brand, it's more than likely going to be a slow, steady growth towards attracting a retailer. And one of the things you want to do when you do get that meeting with a retailer, when you do have a chance to, do that first fulfillment, is have your supply chain ready to do that. And so, the next piece, the second one is, ShipBob partnerships. We have a number of partnerships. I mentioned GS1, but also with brokers and accelerators. So depending on where you're at in your retail journey, there's a number of partnerships we can introduce to help you accelerate that.
All right. And if anyone is interested, I'm going to drop a link in the chat. You can read a lot about stories from our own merchants who started doing B2B and has ShipBob fulfilling those B2B orders. You can read more about their growth journeys on our shipbob.com blog on our case study section. If no one has any further questions, then we'll close out a little bit early. But we do appreciate you all taking the time to be with us today. The recording will be available after the event has concluded. So if you have someone on your team that wasn't able to make it, you'll be able to share a link with them so they can view the recording after the event has closed. But Shai and Wes, thank you guys so much for taking time out of your day to present our second episode on our Omnichannel series. Thank you, everyone.